After being in labor for like 7 magical days, I finally had a cesarean section at about 2 p.m. yesterday.
It's a healthy baby for this transgender man. Casey Sullivan is said to be the first person in the world who has given birth to a baby once while living as a woman and then again while living as a man. Before transitioning, Casey had now 5-year-old Grayson. Then, 4 years ago, he began his transition from female to male.
I'm 32 weeks, a little bit more than 32 weeks now. So 7 months, getting pretty big for sure.
Casey started documenting his pregnancy online to break the stigma around trans parenthood. Now he's celebrating the birth of his 8-pound, 9-ounce little one.
We have the hiccups.
Casey and his partner Steven are keeping the sex of the baby private, but nothing can hide their joy in the meantime.
Well, the Pentagon announces its approval for the recruitment of transgender troops in opposition of President Trump's order to stop the enlistment of trans individuals. One America's Marty Galingan has more on the decision.
After months of uncertainty, transgender recruits will be allowed to serve in the U.S. military starting on New Year's Day 2018. The Department of Defense made the announcement after federal courts ordered officials to lift the ban. A federal judge denied the DOJ's request to move the January 1st deadline while the case makes its way through the appeals system. As part of the DoD's announcement, the Pentagon introduced new guidelines for trans recruits. Potential service members will still need to go through rigorous health and background screenings. People can be disqualified for enlistment if they have gender dysphoria or if they have undergone recent transition surgery. However, potential service members can be allowed to serve if they have a doctor's approval that they are clinically stable in their preferred gender for at least 18 months and show no signs of mental distress regarding their transition. New recruits must also maintain regular hormone therapy and prescriptions for at least 18 months before they can be accepted. Government lawyers argued forcing defense officials to accept transgender troops negatively impacts military readiness. Back in July, President Trump made the decision to bar trans recruits via Twitter, saying the U.S. could not afford the tremendous medical costs and disruption from the marginalized group. The transgender community is not declaring victory just yet, with many advocates believing that the court system is a slow-moving process, leaving them doubtful of what could happen next with President Trump's military trans ban.
Artificial intelligence, or AI, is the science of programming machines or computers to reproduce human processes like learning and decision-making. Recent technological advances, for example intelligent algorithms which can decide autonomously what actions to take to achieve their objective, have seen AI take great strides forward, creeping steadily into our daily lives. Smartphones are getting smarter, cyber assistants can find information in the blink of an eye, and autonomous vehicles could soon increase road safety, potentially eliminating the risk of human error. AI offers the promise of a highly efficient world in which robots take care of our sick, stock our fridges, plan our holidays, and do hazardous jobs humans should not or will not do. Game playing is a crucial measure of AI progress, proving that a machine can execute certain intellectual tasks better than humans. Computer mastery of chess and more recently Go, the ultimate board game, have been hailed as moments in humanity's quest to create smart machines. In medicine, software can already diagnose illnesses, including some cancers, as efficiently as a real doctor. But the issue of how to adapt workforces to cope with this fourth industrial revolution has economists and policymakers scratching their heads. Millions of jobs could be threatened as robots become capable of nearly everything humans do. There are concerns that if left unchecked, the development of superintelligence could pose a threat to humanity, with computers outsmarting and outmanipulating humans. Yet, while robot surgeons and Terminator-style military droids could soon make the leap from science fiction to reality, superintelligence, where technology can match or exceed the flexible human brain, is still a way off. Much more needs to be done to endow robots with social intelligence, enabling them to understand the subtleties of everyday decisions.
Well, Yemen's blood bank has appealed for help as it is running out of basic materials. Officials at the center blame the situation on the ongoing Saudi blockade and say they will be forced to close it down in the near future. The closure of the facility puts the lives of those who need to receive blood for survival at stake. Press TV's Muhammad Al-Attab reports from Sana'a.
This is Muhammad. He suffers from leukemia and was forced to leave his village months ago to receive treatment in the capital, Sana'a.
In our village, which is close to the border with Saudi Arabia, there is no blood bank or cancer therapy center because of the current war waged against our country. I have spent huge money in the past 9 months for my treatment here in Sana'a.
But this is not the whole story. Muhammad and lots of other patients' lives are threatened as they may no longer be able to receive blood. That is because Yemen's blood center is running out of basic materials, an issue that officials blame on the ongoing Saudi blockade of the country.
We have appealed for help as the National Center is about to close down due to the lack of blood, test strips and other essential medical equipment. This is a direct outcome of the Saudi blockade.
Officials at the blood bank say the Saudi blockade is also hampering humanitarian efforts by international organizations.
The non-profit center is supported by the World Health Organization, which has previously provided 60% of required materials for blood transfusion. The international organization itself is affected by the Saudi blockade, and this affects our humanitarian work to save lives.
Life has become harder for Yemenis in recent weeks after Saudi Arabia further tightened its blockade, which it imposed in 2015. Riyadh says the restrictions are in response to retaliatory attacks by Ansar Allah fighters. But the blockade and its restrictions are directly affecting the civilian population's lives. Riyadh has remained defiant with increasing calls to ease the restrictions, which have also raised fears of famine, targeting millions of Yemenis. Another crisis unfolding because of the Saudi blockade, this time the closure of the country's blood bank, which is imminent and means more deaths could happen soon. Muhammad Al-Attab, Press TV, from the blood bank, Sana'a.
The International Committee of the Red Cross says life has stopped in its tracks in Myanmar's Rakhine State, as the remaining Rohingya Muslims are now coupled with fear all the time. The ICRC Director of Operations said an estimated 180,000 Rohingya in the region are fearful after the violent army crackdown made hundreds of thousands of others flee the country. Dominique Stillhart warned about the prevailing tensions between Muslims and dominant Buddhist communities in the Flashpoint region. He noted that the constant fear and uncertainty prevent Muslim traders from accessing their own livelihoods, like agricultural fields, markets and services. The senior Red Cross official made the remarks after a 3-day mission to the region. The ICRC is the only aid agency operating in northern Rakhine after Myanmar's military waged an anti-Rohingya campaign, which the UN has called ethnic cleansing. Imran Shah, spokesperson of the Muslim Public Affairs Committee UK, joins us from London. You know, this Myanmar crisis is continuing. Horrific reports continue pouring in. ICRC, in this case, well, they have access to Rakhine State. Not many agencies do. But still, what about action to prevent the continuation of the atrocities? What can be done?
Well, there was talk last month of trying to bring a deal that was brokered to bring the refugees outside of Burma to Rakhine State again. But then there wasn't really a tackling of the systematic issue of both nationalist and democratic forces accepting the Rohingya as part of the Myanmar identity. And that's until you have that paradigm shift, until the whole of Burma on a political scale actually accepts the Rohingya people as Burmese, as Myanmar citizens, we're always going to have this question of the Rohingya problem. And any effort to really try and create a peaceful settlement on this is kind of a waste of time unless we actually get to the root of that problem.
Imran Shah, thank you. Spokesperson for Muslim Public Affairs Committee UK.
Dominic Brothers doesn't have a place he can call home. He lives in a shelter most nights when he's lucky.
Homeless is hard. Being homeless is hard. It's easier to get a job and wake up every day and go to work.
But yet a job is something that Brothers says he can't get. He's in his mid-30s and living on the street is a way of life.
You ask people for money, but they ain't gonna really give you no money. You ask people for food, but they ain't really gonna give you no food. It's like we just left out here to die.
Brothers is part of the U.S.'s estimated 500,000 homeless population. Rising housing prices, a challenging job market, and sluggish economic growth are all believed to be factors in the rise of homelessness.
It's a tough situation to evaluate homelessness because there are many misconceptions about it.
Cities such as Los Angeles and New York, among others, are showing large increases in their homeless populations.
Like many social problems, the reasons for homelessness are multifaceted. And even though it's a global concern, it seems like it's an exceptional struggle here in the United States. Experts are trying to determine why.
Gavin Altman is a U.S. policy analyst. He says that the complexities surrounding homelessness make it challenging to resolve.
It deals with a lot of sort of economic conditions, unemployment, housing prices, real estate prices. And then there's this other issue of chronic homelessness, which is once a person dips below that threshold, how quickly can we get them back on their feet?
Brothers says he's unsure of when he'll ever be on stable footing. He relies on handouts from others. And even then, he says, it's hard.
Ain't nobody's fault but mine. You know, I put myself in this position. I'm trying to get myself out of this position, so it's just taking some time.
For many homeless in the United States, time is all they have. Colin Campbell, Press TV, Washington.
Now to the latest on that terror attack here in New York City. The suspect has now been charged, and prosecutors say he posted on social media just before the attack. ABC's Gio Benitez is here with more. Good morning, Gio.
Hey there, Michael. Good morning. Listen, in newly filed charges, prosecutors say it was supposed to be a suicide bombing attack with Akayed Ola buying his explosive materials just 2 to 3 weeks ago, his planning a year in the making. Now, the morning of the attack, they say he taunted the president on Facebook, writing this: "Trump, you failed to protect your nation." Now, overnight, ABC News spoke with Allah's wife. She says she spoke with her husband the morning of the bombing from her apartment in Bangladesh. She says she called him at 5 a.m. to wake him up for work and that he never said anything about the U.S. Her mother said he was last in Bangladesh this past October. Now, authorities say Allah was angry about the treatment of Muslims in the Middle East, his ISIS radicalization beginning 4 years ago online. They even discovered his passport filled with handwritten notes, including this: "Oh, America, die in your rage." And Michael, he now faces 5 federal terror-related charges, which could land him behind bars for life.
Well, Saudi Arabia has once again targeted the Yemeni provinces of Sana'a and Taiz, killing at least 50 people there.
At midnight, the Saudi-led coalition, supported by the United States, hit the prisoners inside the military police compound, and the aggression continued its airstrike on the prisoners until it killed tens of helpless prisoners.
At least 39 people were killed and nearly 100 injured as Saudi warplanes pounded a police compound east of the capital, Sana'a. Witnesses say the compound, housing some 180 prisoners, was targeted 7 times. In a separate attack, Saudi fighter jets targeted a vehicle in Taiz province, killing at least 11 civilians. Over 13,000 Yemenis, mostly civilians, have been killed, and since Saudi Arabia and its allies waged a devastating war against the impoverished Arab nation back in March 2015. Eric Wahlberg is an author and journalist joining us from Toronto. You know, it's been now over a week that, perhaps even longer, that Saudi Arabia has come and said, we're going to ease the blockade, but there's numerous reports saying that that hasn't really happened. Why is it that Saudi Arabia gives a commitment and is backtracking on it?
Yes, it's terrible, but I don't think we should be surprised. Saudi Arabia is not a country that keeps its word, and it is a country that is willing to kill people. It's been showing that the last 6 months of bombing and of Yemen. So I don't know what I can really say to add more to the criticism of Saudi Arabia, except to maybe point the finger at the West for allowing this to go on. If the U.S. had spoken out strongly, this could have been stopped and some kind of mediation brought about, but obviously it's not in the interest of the U.S.
What is the interest of the U.S. here?
It's hard to say. I mean, you could say that it's just to create chaos. It's a bit like recognizing Jerusalem, just to create more turmoil and more anger. But it's strange because the U.S. is supposed to be fighting terrorism, and its actions and the actions of Saudi Arabia just inflame any Muslim that sees this going on, the humiliation and the devastation of Muslim communities. So I can only see that terrorism will increase.
Thank you, Eric Wahlberg, author and journalist from Toronto.
Well, fighting for control of Jerusalem goes back thousands of years, from biblical times to the Roman Empire to the Crusades. But the current battle for the ancient city is a story with a distinctly 20th century roots about it, as Imtiaz Tayeb now explains.
Two major events within weeks of each other in 1917 have in part led to events now. First, the signing of the Balfour Declaration, when the British government announced support for the creation of what it called a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. The signing was soon followed by the so-called Battle of Jerusalem, where British troops defeated the Ottoman Turkish army, which had controlled Jerusalem for centuries. After nearly 30 years of British colonial rule, the State of Israel was created in 1948 after the so-called War of Independence, with West Jerusalem captured, effectively dividing the city in half, with the historic and religiously important East under Jordanian control. That changed in 1967 and the Six-Day War between Israel and Arab states. Israeli forces seized large areas of territory, including East Jerusalem. Hopes were raised in 1993 with the signing of the Oslo Accords, which ended the First Intifada, or uprising, and laid out a framework for the creation of a Palestinian state. Those efforts ended in 2000 with the start of a second uprising, where Jerusalem was the front line of riots and suicide bomb attacks. The Israeli government began building the separation wall in 2003 and continued to approve the construction of huge Jewish settlements on occupied land, making the creation of a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital increasingly difficult to see. Now, the United States, one of the key brokers between the Palestinians and Israelis, is breaking with years of precedent by recognizing all of Jerusalem as Israel's capital, and unpredictable consequences could be the result.
It should have been a good month for Bethlehem. The city was gearing up to receive many visitors over the Christmas period. But celebrations have been cancelled, the mood dampened by the latest political upheaval. And if anger is directed at Arab leaders, more so at President Trump, to the point that Khader Kanaan removed the American flag from in front of his restaurant.
We removed it because the American president doesn't recognize our flag, as if we don't exist. This is a peaceful way to retaliate. We listened to the U.S. for 25 years. We prayed for peace, we got nothing. Now we have to start from zero.
There's a sense of unease at how Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu are trying to redefine the issue.
There are groups who want to turn this political conflict into a religious one. And this is very dangerous. And we as Christians are the stumbling block. Because if we were not here, Israel can market this conflict easily as a conflict between Jews and Muslims, and then the West will basically stand behind the Jews because of several reasons.
But from here, in front of the Nativity Church, the Palestinian message is one. Bethlehem also carries a lot of symbolism when it comes to the occupation. The separation wall cuts right through the city from the north. Now, President Trump has seen this for himself when he was here earlier this year to meet Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Had the meeting with Vice President Mike Pence gone ahead, well, he would have seen for himself how people feel these days. This graffiti was done as a sign when Trump threatened to build a wall along the border with Mexico. But a day after the Jerusalem announcement, Munzer Amira added a few brush strokes. and a memo to the American Vice President.
It's scary because Jerusalem is now considered Israel, a capital for Jews and the evangelicals. That's a real problem. But we are different than the rest of the region. We say Jerusalem is Palestinian. We don't say it's Muslim or Christian. It's Palestinian and it's under occupation.
Back at the Nativity Square, Nabil Jakaman rebukes Netanyahu's claims that Israel allows freedom of religion.
They don't respect our beliefs. As a Christian, I need a permit from Israel to visit the Holy Sepulchre for Easter. And when I get there, I still get humiliated. Al-Aqsa is also sometimes shut for Muslims. Jerusalem has been lost long ago. They just woke up now. It's too late now.
There's little hope that meetings and summits can change anything. Since 1967, the state people dream of has gradually been taken away. Jerusalem is just the latest chapter in a history of annexation. With Abdul Hamid, Al Jazeera, Bethlehem.
Right after Mike Pence was disrespected following the embassy's statement, well, he came back with the perfect response. Aaron Coates for the Western Journal reports that the Vice President Mike Pence said over the weekend that it's unfortunate the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas decided to cancel their meeting on December 19th. However, Pence revealed that the cancellation will not deter his plans to visit the region. The decision came after the Trump administration announced that they're going to be recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital and move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Quote, it's unfortunate that the Palestinian Authority is walking away again from an opportunity to discuss the future of the region, but the administration remains undeterred in its efforts to help achieve peace between Israelis and Palestinians, and our peace team remains hard at work putting together a plan. That's according to Elisa Farah, who's Pence's press secretary, said in a statement. They continue that the meeting with Pope Tewodros II, head of Egypt's Coptic Church, has been canceled as well. Pence will be visiting the Middle East later this month, where he's set to meet with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi. So if you ask me, I think that, people say that President Trump doesn't lead. And I think that this move is so historic, and it's showing that he is going to lead. He's leading the world in such a historic move. And I thought to myself, if you have a U.S. embassy moving to Jerusalem, a lot of the embassy people, they work together, they communicate with each other. It would be easier if all the embassies were closer. Well, now maybe this is going to force other embassies to move to Jerusalem as well.
The Palestinian Authority president is demanding the United Nations take over peace negotiations, saying the United States is too biased toward Israel. Last week, President Donald Trump officially recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital, breaking decades of U.S. tradition. But Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas went further, saying Trump broke international law. Abbas is likely pointing back to 1980, when Israel declared Jerusalem, complete and united, as the capital of Israel. Not long after, the UN Security Council ruled Israel's decree was null and void. That complete and united part is important because Palestinians want East Jerusalem to be the capital of their future state. Israelis, on the other hand, have long argued Jerusalem isn't a city that can be divided. In his announcement, Trump didn't explicitly weigh in on how or if the city would be divided. But Jerusalem is such a hot-button issue, American administration officials expected Palestinians to step away from the U.S.-led peace effort. Trump has said the U.S. would still support a two-state solution if agreed to by both sides.
Tamamını almanın hesabı gayreti içerisinde. Şu anda Trump efendi bunun gayreti içinde. Niye? Evangelist ve Siyonist bir mantığın ürünüdür şu andaki tablo. Bundan böyle taraf olan bir Amerika'nın artık İsrail-Filistin arasında arabuluculuk yapması diye bir şey söz konusu olamaz. Bu süreç artık
It was a gathering of some of the most influential leaders of the Muslim world. All of them here to reject Donald Trump's decision on Jerusalem and to declare East Jerusalem the capital of the state of Palestine.
There was a call upon the states which
support Palestine, to recognize Palestine as a reaction of what was taken by the U.S. administration, as His Highness Mr. President Mahmoud Abbas. Let those who did not recognize Palestine recognize it, as to express clearly and openly their attitude towards Palestine.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the status of Jerusalem, known in Arabic as Al-Quds, was a red line for Muslims, and that Trump's decision was unlawful and provocative.
Israel, which is guilty of occupation, blockade, illegal settlements, destruction of houses, displacement, seizing land and property, disproportional violence and murder, was rewarded for all the terror acts it committed with this decision.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas told delegates the decision was a crime.
We here are gathered today, and we have behind us the world at large, our peoples, our nations, all Muslims and Christians, both in our region and across the world, are in our support to defend Al-Quds, Jerusalem, and preserve it against the conspiracies that are being played to alter its nature and character.
The emergency meeting was held in response to the announcement last week by U.S. President Donald Trump on the future of the city.
I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
His declaration was almost universally condemned, including by the United Nations and the European Union. It triggered worldwide protests, in particular across the Middle East and other Muslim-majority countries. Jerusalem is a holy site for Christians, Jews, and Muslims. It remains at the core of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The summit ended with a formal declaration that the United States should withdraw from its role in the peace process.
While the IOC will be pushing for the rest of the world to officially recognize East Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine, the real challenge for the group will be to get them on board. And only then, President Erdogan says, can they embark on a lasting and sustainable peace process. Alican Ayanlar, TRT World in Istanbul.
On December the 12th, ISIS conducted a surprise attack on the Syrian Arab Army, SAA, on the western bank of the Euphrates in the province of Deir ez-Zor. According to reports, members of ISIS entered the villages of Al-Jalaa, Sayal, Salihiyah, Mujaddah, Abbas and Al-Haza. Clashes in the area continued on December the 13th. According to pro-government sources, ISIS wasn't able to develop their initial success and will be forced to withdraw from the area soon. This was the second major ISIS attack on the SAA since the start of the week. On December the 11th, ISIS attacked SAA positions near Abu Kamal. On December the 12th, the Kurdish-dominated Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, advanced along the eastern bank of the Euphrates and captured Haraj and Al-Baran. Thus, the US-backed force used the ISIS attacks on the SAA to further their own progress. The SAA and the National Defense Forces, NDF, led by the 4th Armored Division, liberated the town of Zahra and the nearby height from Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, formerly Jabhat al-Nusra, the Syrian branch of al-Qaeda, and deployed within striking distance of the important village of Abu Dali. Despite the recently declared partial withdrawal of Russian forces, pro-militant sources continue accusing Russian warplanes of airstrikes on its targets. On December the 12th, a White House National Security Council spokesperson said that the US administration thinks the Russian declarations of ISIS defeat are premature. We have repeatedly seen in recent history that a premature declaration of victory was followed by a failure to consolidate military gains, stabilize the situation, and create the conditions that prevent terrorists from re-emerging, Reuters quoted the statement. However, on the same day, US President Donald Trump said that the US has won against ISIS in Syria and Iraq. We've won in Syria, we've won in Iraq, but they spread to other areas and we're getting them as fast as they spread, Trump said on Tuesday at the White House during a ceremony to sign defense policy legislation. It would seem advisable for the US President to improve his coordination with his spokespersons regarding their statements.
It's time to talk, according to US Secretary of State Rex Tillerson in an apparent new diplomatic overture to North Korea. Tillerson has offered direct talks with Pyongyang without Washington issuing its normal insistence that it disarms first.
And we're ready to have the first meeting without precondition. Let's just meet, and we can talk about the weather if you want. We can talk about whether it's going to be a square table or a round table if that's what you're excited about. But can we at least sit down and see each other face to face? And then we can begin to lay out a map.
Numerous missile and nuclear tests by North Korea have strained diplomatic relations, made worse by a war of words between President Trump and North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un. UN Representative Jeffrey Feltman, who recently visited Pyongyang, said he felt he had left the door ajar for talks.
They did not offer any type of commitment to us at that point. I think that they have to reflect on what we said with their own leadership, and I don't want to try to suggest I can read the minds of my interlocutors or put words in their mouth.
North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons technology has led to heavy US-led sanctions. Despite that, its leader has so far vowed to develop more missiles and to keep on testing.
North Korea continues to toot its own horns over the latest missile launch when experts remain divided over the test's success. Through its state-run TV, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un vowed to make the regime the strongest nuclear power in the world. Our Park Hee-jun reports.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has vowed to make North Korea the world's strongest nuclear power. The state-run Korean Central News Agency reported on Wednesday that he made the remarks during the 8th Conference of Munitions Industry in Pyongyang, which was held to celebrate the regime's experiences and accomplishments. And one of those key accomplishments was, of course, the recently launched Hwasong-15 ICBM, which is said to be capable of reaching anywhere in the United States. According to the report, Kim Jong-un said that the country will victoriously advance and leap as the strongest nuclear and military power in the world. Kim added that the successful weapons development marks a historic victory for the North Korean people, but one that came at a great cost. He went on to award the developers of the Hwasong-15 on the last day of the special military conference. This is the first time that North Korean state media has publicly reported on the conference.
Kim's character of wanting to show off his achievements may have led to the event being made public. And by declaring that North Korea is a full-fledged nuclear power, the leader intends to put the nation in a position where it can negotiate at the international table.
Experts say that the unprecedented coverage aims to solidify North Korea as a nuclear power and that the regime has no intention of scaling down its weapons program. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
China and South Korea have maintained diplomatic ties for a quarter of a century, but their relationship has never been an easy one. And tensions have risen since March. That's when Seoul deployed the THAAD missile defense system, which Beijing sees as a threat to its own security. And President Moon Jae-in's visit this week could be a turning point towards what Seoul calls a more mature relationship.
South Korea will be extremely careful from here on out that the THAAD system is not invasive of China's security. South Korea has received promises from the United States multiple times regarding this. At present, the situation in the region is extremely grim. I think we should not treat the issue pessimistically at a time like this. Instead, we should be optimistic and hopeful.
South Korea has paid a heavy price for upsetting its biggest trade partner. Official data suggests around $6.5 billion has been lost in tourism revenue from China this year. Moon appears determined to revive the economic relationship. He's bringing a business delegation with 220 companies with him. There are signs already that the frosty relations are beginning to thaw. Last month, China eased a nearly 9-month ban on tour groups going to South Korea, while Seoul now has visa-free entry for Chinese nationals. But an important obstacle to better relations remains: North Korea. China is pushing for a double freeze in which North Korea would stop its weapon tests in exchange for a halt to South Korean military exercises with the U.S. But that idea has been rejected by the White House and South Korea.
China has always maintained its stance on denuclearization on the peninsula, and although South Korea shares that goal, it remains skeptical. Because there is a long historical bond between China and North Korea, these two communist countries fought side by side against the U.S. during the Korean War, and that bond has continued to the present day. The reason why negotiations aren't moving forward is because China and South Korea simply don't trust each other.
It's not just mutual trust that needs restoration. For Moon, getting the economic relationship back on track will also be a priority. Persuading China to push harder on North Korea will remain a challenge for both countries.
I find that the change in viewpoint from the United States Department of State's side regarding North Korea offering to negotiate and discuss the issue without preconditions is amazingly good. It's especially astounding in the fact that the Trump administration is so irrational and so changeable, and has in fact made such a mess out of things in the Middle East with giving Quds, Jerusalem, to Israel, and making common cause with Israel against Palestine and the rest of the Arab and Muslim world. I find that Tillerson, who is supposedly on the outs with the president, has extended himself and made a firm decision to start talking to the North Koreans. Certainly the North Koreans, it's a failed state, really. They're poor, they're starving, and they have nothing to offer the rest of the world except maybe coal and fish. So I think normalization of relations, ending this war of words, ending these threatening gestures with overflights of warplanes and sending warship after warship into waters around North Korea is absolute insanity, and a way to bring about another war, which the United States does not need and the rest of the world does not need, because it can rapidly escalate, destroying South Korea and Japan and maybe parts of the United States. We don't know. But this is a good thing. And I find it reprehensible that the Prime Minister of Japan, Abe, is opposed to it. I find that his right-wing viewpoints are not good. His efforts to create a change in the Constitution to use the Japanese supposed self-defense force as more of a war-fighting force outside Japan's territorial waters to be very disquieting. And I think that it's the Japanese have to be told that their own interest lies in the fact of putting an end to the conflict or potential conflict between North Korea and the region. I think that Tillerson is doing the right thing, and I think that it's absolutely amazing, as I mentioned earlier. I don't want to repeat myself, but I was at a function last night for Arab American Day, and was speaking to an officer from the State Department, and she said the only thing you can predict about Donald Trump and his government is that it's unpredictable. So I welcome this unpredictability in this case, and I find that it's an excellent thing.
Let Daddy shave his head. I'm gonna shave my head.
A dad giving his daughter a loving pep talk turned into an act of solidarity. Riley Silveria of Rhode Island lost her hair from alopecia when she was 15 months old. She's 6 now, and her mom says she still gets sad over not having hair like other girls her age. So when her dad, David, offered to shave his head, Riley was into the idea.
Wanna do it right now? Okay, let's go.
Wow!
You wanna do one?
Riley even tried her hand at being a barber.
See? All gone. And get it nice and short, just like Riley's.
As upset as Riley was earlier, she lit up seeing her dad bald like her. Her mom says the family struggles with Riley's condition, but their main goal is to make sure Riley always knows she is loved and that they think she is beautiful just the way she is.